Happy New Year, everybody. This is Alex Young with Remax Select Properties.
And Chris Cornborough from Forefront Mortgages. Happy 2021.
Now, I wanted to discuss something and pick your brain a little bit. I've been, at least over the last year, I've been getting some inquiries in regards to people actually wanting to move to bigger spaces, just like how the trend was going, right? And a lot of them, they purchased pre-2015, where the market was more balanced, more predictable, and the conventional way of buying was, you get an accepted offer, and then you go to the bank to get a mortgage approval. Once that's done, you do your inspection, this and that, and you remove subjects and firm up the deal. So a lot of them are just coming back to the market now to find a bigger space, whether their family is expanding or needing to work from home. And they don't quite know what the word pre-approval means.
Okay.
So essentially the difference between a pre-approval and a full mortgage approval. So a lot of them have been asking me what the difference is, and if I'm approved for $1 million, does that mean that I can buy anything that's listed under $1 million? So, and I had to explain to them that that's not quite the case. So might as well get the information directly from you, the expert.
Yeah, totally. Well, the pre-approval, the difference with pre-approval versus approval is a pre-approval is basically everything. So we do credit check, we get your income, we take a look at what you're going to be buying. And we say, in our professional opinion, this is going to work for the lenders. And we have a broad list of lenders. So we sort of say, this will work for like most lenders, or this is going to work for a couple specific lenders, or even a specific lender, for example, right? An approval is when we've sent all your documents, including the purchase details, so the purchase agreement, MLS listing, the minutes, if it's a condo, the Form B, all that stuff, into the lender, and they've looked at it all and said, we're good, 100%. Here's the piece of paper. So a pre-approval is halfway to an approval, but just because you're pre-approved, we do get the question, can I just go in and buy anything, or should I put subjects in? Yeah, you probably should, because you might buy in a building where there's a total disaster waiting to happen in the strata minutes, leaky condo, special assessment, insurance premium issue, for example. So you don't want to go in blindly. The pre-approval is more of like a roadmap to like getting you to where you need to go, but you still do want to have a subject or two. And we don't need long for subjects. We can get subjects taken off in a couple days or even a day if we need to, but you just want to make sure, because we only know so much. We know your finances, we know your credit, we know your budget, but we don't know the property specific details. So if there's an issue with the property, for example, or the lender doesn't like the property, or you don't like the property, not having subjects is obviously going to be problematic, right? So that's really the difference. A lot of folks, because you can't go to the bank anymore, they'll do like an online pre-approval, just sort of get some numbers. Those are a waste of time. They're useless. They're not going to do you any good, because a computer is not going to check your credit. They're not going to know the difference. If you've got, for example, if you're self-employed and you make $100,000 and you put $100,000 into the pre-approval website, it's going to think that's your income. But maybe you've got write-offs. Maybe you actually deduct a lot from that income, so your actual take-home income might be $60,000. The computer doesn't know the nuances of that. So if you're doing an online pre-approval that's not involving a human being, I'd be very skeptical of relying on that to go and spend your time looking for a home. And certainly don't rely on those to go in like with a subject-free offer. A lot of the times the online mortgage calculators at most of the banks, and even some of the ones online, they're really incorrect. And so it'll give you a number saying you can buy for much lower or higher than you actually can afford. So talk to a mortgage broker. Obviously we can run the numbers for you. We know what we're doing. We'll do it live. We can have a Zoom chat about like the specifics, and you've got a pretty good sense from there as to what your confidence level can be when you're going to buy a place.
Yeah, and right? It's a free process. It's good to know.
It takes 15-20 minutes. It's a great investment for your time, and certainly knowing things like rates, options, prepayment. These are things that you can't really do online, and a lot of times if you're dealing with like the bank, that person might have just opened a savings account. They've got your mortgage pre-approval application next, and then they're going to do an RSP. Like, they're not a specialist in in mortgages. And with the market the way that it is, you need to have a team of professionals on your side. It's super important. And we all work for free, right? There's no cost or obligation to it. Just a bit of time investment, but it's time well spent and time definitely worth it.
And I completely agree.
Yeah.
You know, when I have buyers that are looking in the market, I always want to know what they're pre-approved for.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste their time looking at things that either they can't afford or it's way below what they want.
Totally.
And it's always good to know kind of a ballpark of what they can afford.
Absolutely.
And from what I understand, essentially, borrowing money for a property, there are two things to look at. One is how much the buyers can afford, and secondly is whether that property is worth that much, right?
Yep.
So the pre-approval, from what I understand, is essentially the first half, is what they can afford. So just because I can afford $1 million doesn't mean that what I'm buying right now today is actually worth $1 million. Let's say it's worth $800,000, but then multiple offers drives it up to $1 million. Doesn't mean that if I make that $1 million offer, I'm going to get the lender to give me the amount of money I need to complete on it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's fair enough.
Yeah, so, but it's always a good idea to know kind of what your borrowing power is.
Absolutely.
And to see exactly where you stand and what sub-market to look for, and it's always easier and more efficient to look in that market. You're not overstretching and you're not, under delivering either. So I think that's always the first step. And I think in this year, again, that will play a big part into kind of what the buyers do.
Totally.
And what they can actually take advantage of.
The pre-approval, kind of segueing into that as well, is if you've got a property, you want to sell it, we get the question, should I sell or buy and sell first?
Right.
So part of that pre-approval process can be a couple different scenarios.
Right.
What if I need to make a quick offer on something, or what if I have already sold, what happens with your existing mortgage, things of that nature, where you can't really do that over the phone or, on a website. It's got to be more of like a in-depth analysis and a bit more of a lengthy conversation for those nuances of, if you've owned a place in 2015, like you were saying, your mortgage is probably coming up for renewal. So, what do you do in those circumstances as well, right? There's a lot of important questions other than the fact of, what's the interest rate or what's my payment? There's way more to it than just those two questions.
Whether you can afford a mortgage or whether there's penalties.
Exactly. Should you? Could you? Yeah, absolutely.
So there's actually a lot more than what people know, what people think they know. In regards to the pre-approvals and mortgages and so forth, especially if you're moving from a property to another property.
Exactly.
There's a lot of kind of transferring of funds and transferring of fees and so forth.
Totally.
So it's best to speak to a mortgage broker. Always be prepared. That's what we always try to suggest. And more information is always better than not enough.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
So thank you again
for
Alex. Doing this. And Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
We hope to see you in the coming year. Have a good day.